Welcome to the Green Margin Podcast, where we talk about the financial and operational realities of running a cannabis business. I'm Daniel Sabet, and today we're talking about something that every operator needs, but not necessarily everyone fully understands, and that's insurance. From dispensaries to cultivators to manufacturers, cannabis businesses face a unique set of risks, and making sure you're properly covered can be the difference between surviving a setback and ultimately shutting down. So today we're going to talk about how insurance actually fits into running a cannabis business. Joining me today is Corey Lake from Lake Group Insurance in Minnesota. Corey works with cannabis operators across the industry, helping them navigate insurance coverage for everything from retail stores to cultivation to production facilities. Given how complex and specialized the cannabis space is, he's seen firsthand where operators are properly covered and where they're exposed. Corey, thanks for joining me today.
Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure. So let's start with what you do. For someone in the cannabis industry who may not fully understand their options, what types of insurance services do you provide?
Yeah, so I like to say that we provide seed to sale, startup to IPO. So we insure the entire vertical. So from the farm all the way through the process to the end sale, and then every single size of business. So from startup to multi-state operators.
Very nice. And how does cannabis insurance differ from traditional business insurance?
A lot of things are very similar in the sense. I like to use an orange producer as an example. You're insuring the farm, you're insuring the processing, you're insuring the product, and then you're insuring the sale. So as far as like the lineage of how that works, that's all remained basically the same. The differentiator is we throw the word cannabis in there, and then we also throw some federal regulations in there that are deeper than, say, something like farming. So there's more complexity to it, but as far as how the insurance looks, it looks pretty much identical to any other type of insurance out there.
I see. And I know you work with operators across different verticals. From your perspective, what are some of the biggest pain points in the cannabis industry when it comes to insurance?
The expense, there's still a cannabis tax on insurance, which it's still new in the insurance space. So in insurance, we look at risk profile over the course of time. And one of the example I like to use for that is something like a Honda Civic. We pretty much know how many accidents a Honda Civic is going to get in over the course of a year. So we're using lots of analytics to do predictive pricing on how to, if you are a 35-year-old male driving a Honda Civic and you live in this type of neighborhood in this type of house, we can get a good idea of what that rate is supposed to look like. Cannabis being so new, and the other thing I liken it to is cyber insurance. So cyber insurance comes out, they don't know how to price it, they don't know where to price it. So it's a little bit of Wild West trying to figure that out. It's gotten better over time, and cannabis is now in that same space where we now have about 15 to almost 20 years of experience. So we're actually starting to see the prices come down, and we're really starting to see where the hazards or the exposures or the losses actually are, and then what those losses look like as far as a monetary value, which is helping us dictate how to price these products.
I see. I'll tell you, I work with a lot of operators, and as we go through their numbers and discuss projections and certain costs, they always have in their numbers insurance, and the two types they feel like they must have is general liability and workers' comp for their employees. But I think that they're probably selling themselves a little short as far as other types of coverage they might need. I was just wondering, what are the ones that you would prioritize? And maybe you can go by vertical, what retail needs versus cultivation versus manufacturing.
Yeah, and luckily they're all the same with some added stuff. Work comp in most states is mandated. So I'm located in Minnesota. In Minnesota, you have to carry work comp insurance. If you have a part-time employee, you have to carry work comp insurance. Now, it's different in different states, but one of our regulations are if you own 25% or less, so you're an owner, but you own 25% or less, you have to have work comp put on yourself. If you're an owner and you own 25% or more, you can opt out. But as soon as you have your first part-time employee, you have to carry it. So look at your state regulations for that, but work comp is a big one. I would also say as an owner, purchase work comp on yourself. If you get injured on the job, it pays for your medical and a bunch of other stuff, and it's the least expensive, most robust insurance that you can possibly buy. Now, if you're leasing, renting, any of those sort of things, or whatever you're doing on somebody else's property, they're probably going to ask you to carry general liability. So it's not going to be a state mandate necessarily, but it is going to be a part of your lease contract. And then some leases will go into, if we're talking about a dispensary, probably some property coverage, equipment breakdown, some other variable things that they may want you to carry in order to occupy that space. And that's protection for you and protection for them, but not law, not mandated. If you own your own building, you're going to be getting building coverage or a property coverage on the building itself, as well as those same things, cyber, property, product liability, those sort of things. So the big differentiators come in starting with farming. You really need equipment and something like a product liability, for example. Product liability is if somebody says they got injured using the product. So product liability should follow the product from farm to sale. So the farmer should have product liability. The person either packaging or creating the product should have that if it's not being done at the farm. So let's say you're doing a rosin, something like that, and the farm is giving it to an extractor. The extractor's making it, they should be carrying product liability. And then let's say the store should be. So if somebody says, I got injured using your product at the store level, that lawsuit is going to go all the way through, probably back to the farm. So everybody in that chain needs that sort of coverage. Farming, you may also look at crop insurance. That's going to be unique to farming or on the indoor grow side. And then we move to the processing side. So processing is going to be more product liability, again, equipment breakdown, those sort of things. And then the store on the retail side, we've got a couple other things that we want to look at. One is a bud tender's liability, which is you tell somebody that it's going to cure your knee pain, and the client comes in and goes, it didn't cure my knee pain. So it's those sort of things. And then there's a couple other little nuanced things that are nice to have in those situations, especially the property that goes to the finished product. Property, money, those sort of things all need to be looked at inside the insurance policy.
Yep. Going back to the crop insurance, I know you mentioned that's essential or highly recommended in cultivation. Is that my understanding that, let's say there's some issue with your lights not turning on one night and the whole crop gets destroyed? Is that where the insurance comes in and can compensate you for that, or is there more to it than that?
Yeah, there's more to it, but that's a great example. That could also be under equipment breakdown. So there is some crossover in between crop insurance and property and equipment breakdown, those sort of things. And it's really, these are the things where you go to a specialist like myself that can help you weave and navigate those sort of situations. Crop insurance has notoriously been expensive, hard to get. Very few people are actually offering it. And it's pretty limited into what it will actually cover. For me, I like to, if you're a new business and you are putting everything you have into this, meaning you're leveraging all of your assets and this is your dream, I think crop insurance is a pretty important component to look at. If you're well financed and you can lose your first or second crop while you're working out those wrinkles over the course of your first 2 or 3 cycles, it's something that could be a nice to have. But that's stuff that we go through and try to walk you through and say, hey, these things are really important, or your landlord is telling you you have to carry this stuff, or your state is. And then these things are nice to have. This is what could happen. This is what we've seen happen. This is where we find those risks. And then these are how we handle those claims if they come about. So there's a lot of stuff that's really important and other things that are just nice to have.
Yeah. And when making those decisions, it all comes down to cost versus value for the consumer. I know insurance is one of those areas where people often try to minimize the cost. In your opinion, how should operators think about the balance between cost and coverage? And where do you see people making decisions that might save money short term, but can create that long-term risk?
Yeah, it's all good questions. We deal with people all over the country. And again, startup to IPO. So I work with people that are literally putting everything they have into just trying to get a business off the ground. And we work with really well-funded companies as well. Those risk reward pieces are different for different types of operators. And some of it comes down to what can we afford? Something that we like to do is we like to allow people to limp in over time, which comes with some risk, but it allows you to get your general liability policy. As you make some sales, we get the property. As there's more, we continue to build your coverage over the course of time. Other people, we just give them everything. You just give them the entire package, everything that can be sold, and they're fine with moving forward with it. Risk reward portion there is it's all about what you can lose. There's a big part of this that comes down to some self-insured retention, meaning your deductible. So you're on your auto, you have a call it a $500 deductible. You're self-insuring up to that $500. And if you can take a bigger risk, so let's say you can risk 1,000, 2,000, or 10,000, we can start to break down the insurance a little bit and go, okay, so your risk profile is X, and now your costs are going to go along with that. We have clients that have massive deductibles and really are only insuring for the biggest risk that could possibly happen. So some catastrophic loss, the entire farm burns down. Okay, now we've got this big payout. And we've got other people that are like, hey, I need to make sure that I am covered the best that I can. This is where we've budgeted, and this is what we can do today. There's a lot of variation there, and I don't know if that's a great answer for what you asked, but you try to work with what you have at the end of the day.
Yeah, no, that's always the case. It's the operators that I deal with, especially over the last couple of years in certain areas of the United States, their price per pound went down, their sales have gone down. So now they're really looking at their costs and saying, okay, do I really need this? Do I really need that? So it's good to know that it all depends on their risk tolerance. And like you mentioned, you can always change the plan with higher deductibles if they feel the need it. They are a little bit more risk taking in that sense, as opposed to being risk averse.
Or they have to at the end of the day. Insurance it's a pretty substantial expense. And what I've always found interesting is how it's not talked about. You can be in a room with a bunch of cannabis experts, CPAs, attorneys, and they can be talking about all sorts of things in the cannabis space and the expense of how much it costs to open a dispensary. And very rarely do they throw insurance in there. They'll talk about the equipment, they'll talk about the startup pad, they'll talk about literally everything except the insurance. And insurance is right around your fourth largest expense. Employees, rent, a handful of other, but it's like in the top 5 of expenses. And I've had people come to me after they are ready to launch their store and go, yeah, we didn't even think about insurance. Oh, okay, it's going to be a thing. And we should probably talk about it now. And just to prepare you, it's not inexpensive. And they go, oh, great.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, when it comes to filing the claims for these insurance policies, have you seen any issues that clients have faced when actually trying to file them? Were there situations where they thought they were covered and they weren't, or they didn't understand the concept behind it?
Absolutely. So I can't give you like actual examples, but what I can tell you is that one thing that is great about the cannabis space is that it's so hyper regulated. And we go and we look at every single client's operation, and we'll go in and do a risk assessment. We'll pull the information from there, and then we try to get them an appropriate policy. And because it's so heavily regulated, I talked to a claims adjuster once, and they're like, one of the greatest things about this industry is that there's cameras everywhere. One of the worst things is that there's cameras everywhere. And I will give you this one example because it was an example given to me. So there was a grow, and the grow had LED lights, and they had a fire. So they went back and they viewed all the cameras. What they learned was that one of the LED lights had bent down, broke, sparked, started a fire. They went further back and watched them install the lights. What they learned was that the lights weren't installed correctly. Because of that, because they didn't follow the manufacturer's guidelines in installing the lights, their claim was denied.
Oh my God.
So had there not been cameras in that room, and had they not seen all of that, it probably would have been a covered claim because it was a fire. Fire's covered. But because they didn't do the installation correctly, they didn't cover the claim. So that is a great example, and something that I tell everybody, especially in this space, is use contractors. Don't do things yourself. Don't install your own HVAC. If you are installing your lights yourself, have somebody from the company come in, or have somebody else there and follow the directions to a T. Do not think that you have the ability to change anything outside of those parameters, because at the end of the day, they're going to come in and look, and they're going to probably figure it out one way or another. And those are those little nuanced things. A lot of the times what will happen is something like the HVAC fan will be blowing the wrong direction or doing something you don't like. So you just get up on a ladder and twist the thing around, and then something catastrophic happens. You're not a licensed HVAC technician, and you're not really allowed to go up on the ladder and twist something around without prior authorization. And if something happens, they're probably not going to cover the claim. So it's always good to be able to point the finger at somebody else and go, hey, no, it was this company, they did it. That way, if there's a claim, you have somebody to subrogate against. And then if your company's not paying the claim, that other company will have to come in and pay that claim.
Yep. Yeah, usually they're insured, they're bonded. And yeah, this whole do-it-yourself mentality for certain things is just, it can really bite you at the end of the day. So
yeah,
I agree with you.
running
We're
risk.
trust professionals on that.
Absolutely. And I'm a big do-it-yourself guy, but just know that you are running a risk of possibly having, if you have a claim, it may not be covered.
Yeah. Now, I just wanted to see if you can give some advice to some of our current operators. For someone who's either opening a new cannabis business or reevaluating their current coverage, what's the first step you think they should take to make sure they're properly insured?
First step I would take is I would call a cannabis specialist. There's a lot of people everywhere, but in this particular industry that think it would be cool, or they're in the insurance space and their buddy has a dispensary and they say, yeah, I can do it. And they find out either they can't or it's difficult and they don't really understand the risk. It's not like saying, I'm used to doing shoe shops and now I've got a clothing store. There's a big leap that happens when you start to get into all of the regulatory framework that goes along with it, all the nuance that goes along with not being able to use your standard market carriers and other things that go with it. So just talk to somebody, get a quote from somebody that knows what they're doing. And if you need to bring it back to your buddy, and it is what it is. We don't win every single thing that we quote, but you really do want to work with somebody that's done it more than once at the end of the day. And preferably somebody that specializes in it, because they're going to give you the best of what's available out in the world.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Now, Corey, before we wrap up, what's one thing operators should understand about insurance that they often overlook?
Let's see here. I think that we just hit on it, is just that insurance. I find that there's two different types of insurance buyers. One of them that has been through a claim and has had a absolutely terrible experience, that believes insurance is a scam and can't be helpful. Others that have been through a claim that have had a wonderful experience and go, yeah, I totally get it. And then I guess there's a third bucket of people that have just been paying the bill for their entire lives and has never had a claim. Get with a specialist and make sure that they are going through this with you in a way that makes sense. If you've got somebody who just wants to turn and burn a policy, or they say that they've got it, they're not walking you through it, they're not explaining sort of the nuances of how insurance is going to help you or how insurance is going to protect you, then you should probably be talking to somebody else as well. So I guess that would be the thing that I would throw out there, is that you should be constantly looking for specialists. And I would say this across the entire cannabis vertical: specialists as an attorney, specialists like yourself, specialist CPAs. It comes with a cost, but it's worth its weight in gold in the long run. It's going to save you money over the course of years. Feel it hard at the beginning, but over the course of years, it's going to be worth its weight in gold.
Absolutely. Now, most operators, they're looking at the long-term picture. So I feel like cutting corners just really isn't going to do it for them. If they want to build a sustainable business that they can keep for a long period of time and grow and either make it a cash cow or eventually sell it off at some point, you got to do things the right way and rely on professionals. So yeah, Corey, thanks for joining me today. Great insights. And thank you to everyone who's tuning into the Green Margin podcast. And we'll see you next time.